There are only two ways to gain an audience with your art. What are they? Well, let's take a look. Hey everybody, JK here from Animator Island. It's a beautiful spring day here in western Pennsylvania, so I thought I'd take a walk in the woods and we could chat about art. So, I just said there are two ways that you can gain an audience with your art. What are they? Well, number one, quality, and number two, content. What does that mean? Well, let's take a minute and dive in a little deeper so that we're on the same page. Starting off with quality. There is a sort of intrinsic level of craftsmanship that is inherent in every piece of art that is done or that you see. I think the best way to understand this is to think about the work of a 5-year-old. If you look at a 5-year-old's art, you will probably quickly determine it's not very high in quality. And especially if you think about somebody who's maybe a little older and further along in their journey. So if you take the art of, say, a 25-year-old who has been working on their craft for well over 2 decades, and then you place it next to the 5-year-old's art, it becomes very apparent very quickly that one of them is higher in quality. Now, you might be saying, hang on a second, JK, that's not fair. Like, the 5-year-old's only 5 years old. You can't compare him with a 25-year-old. That guy's been doing it forever, and you're gonna make him cry. What's wrong with you? Okay, that's fair. But I'm not really telling you to compare a 25-year-old's art with a 5-year-old's, so much as saying, if you set those two next to each other, you can quickly and easily discern what I'm talking about when it comes to quality. Because quality is that inherent craftsmanship. It's hard to tie down. And if you're really interested in this subject, I highly recommend that you check out the book Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. It's a semi-autobiographical fictional novel about a man who takes his son on a motorcycle trip. And along the way, he explains how he went completely insane trying to determine what quality was and teach it to other people. Because quality is a lot like a lot of things in art. It's kind of just this subjective, really vague, weird thing that is extremely hard to pin down. In terms of animation, you might think of it like appeal. Appeal is one of the principles of animation, and yet, did you ever try to define it? It's really hard. I know, because I started writing a book about it and doing a bunch of research, and partway through I was just like, what even is this? I think I'm starting to go crazy. So, like appeal, quality is tricky. It's not something that's very easy to figure out. Let me give you a second example. On the screen right now are two images. Both are portraits of lovely young women. One is done by the legendary John Singer Sargent, and the other is done by Loish, who is quickly becoming legendary in her own right. Both of these images are portraits of a female person, and they are both high in quality. The reason that people are drawn to these images in particular is because of that inherent craftsmanship within them. The reason that we can know that is because the content, well, it's pretty minimal, right? We have two portraits. There's no background. There's no real story going on. I mean, you could make up your own story, but it's not inherent in the images. What's happening here is that we're enthralled by quality. Again, it's really hard to pinpoint. It's hard to tie down, but we can know it when we see it. And so that's a really good example of quality in work. Let's talk about the second thing, content. As I just said, these two portraits, well, they're not really high in content. They're both the same sort of subject matter, a lovely young lady, and unless you are particularly enamored with lovely young ladies, you're probably not drawn to them strictly because of the content. Content is easier to tie down. It's the subject of the piece itself. And content and quality can differ. Let me give you an example of what I mean. And I was racking my brain trying to figure out how to do that, and I think that I concluded the best way is to talk about furries. You know what furries are? Well, if not, let me tell you. It's a particular fan base that really, really likes anthropomorphic animal characters. I mean, really, really likes them. Oh my gosh, I think they're searching for somebody. Helicopters, am I right? Now, I mentioned I'm here in Western Pennsylvania, and every year we have something called Anthrocon, which is where a collection of furries, or people who really like furries, or just people who want to see the spectacle, all gather together at a big convention revolving around that subject. And it's growing and growing more and more every year. The thing with furries is that if you look online, you will find a lot of art dedicated to that subject. The content of these pieces of art are furries, anthropomorphic characters. And an interesting thing happens when you have a great deal of art in one place. So if you go to Twitter or Instagram or DeviantArt and you start looking at furry art, well, first of all, be careful, because there's some very interesting stuff out there. But beyond that, when you have a huge amount of art on one particular subject, there's going to be a lot of low quality art, right? Because you're not just going to get exclusively high quality stuff. It'll exist. There's some very high quality furry images out there, but a lot of the art is going to be low in quality. Now, because the furry fandom is so zealous and so dedicated and so passionate about the content, a lot of times even the low quality art of that content will be very well received, and it will get a lot of people to click the little heart icon on social media and the like. So if you're ever out there looking at social media and you wonder why this particular piece of art, which maybe doesn't seem all that great, is getting so much attention, it is probably because of the content. That's not to say that it might not also be because of the quality and some other things, but generally speaking, in that realm, content is king. And people will look at art, even if it's not great art in terms of quality, strictly because of the content. So those are the two main ways that you gain an audience when it comes to art. But there's two more things to talk about. First, am I saying here that you shouldn't shoot for both quality and content? Of course not. That's the holy grail. That's what you should be after. The best thing you can do as an artist is to focus on both the quality and the content. Now, does that mean you should never do just portraits of pretty girls? Absolutely not. By all means, go and do that thing. It doesn't mean that you can't do just one or just the other. Only that if you shoot for both, well, you're checking both of those boxes, and that's a really good thing. There's another thing we need to talk about. I lied to you. I'm sorry. You know, I said earlier there's only two ways to gain an audience with your art. Well, it's not exactly true. There are three: quality, content, and a little thing called bribery. You see, in our day and age, you can pay people to be interested in your art. It's just the honest truth. And that can upset you. I mean, sometimes it upsets me, because I'll be working super hard on a piece of art, and then somebody with a lot of money comes along, plops down their art, and then pays to have that piece featured, and suddenly it gets a lot more attention, regardless of the quality, regardless of the content. And that can feel bad, right? And so I thought we'd talk about it for a minute, because, well, the truth sets us free. So we shouldn't ignore it. It's really important stuff. But while we're looking at the truth of it, we have to be aware of what we're doing, right? We can't control anybody but ourselves, but we can control ourselves. So if you go out there and you start making art, you should focus on the quality of that art. You should focus on the content of that art. But for goodness sakes, don't pay people to like it, because ultimately that's empty. They're not after your art, they're after your money. The same holds true in other facets. It doesn't have to be dollar bills that you're bribing them with. It can also be social constructs. It can also be social credit. Now, we don't have a year and a half to talk about social credit, but essentially, sometimes when somebody who is esteemed by the community says that something is good, a lot of people will just follow in suit. They'll say, oh yeah, I really like that too. Not because they do like it, not even because it's very good work, but because somebody else said so, and they want that social credit. So that's just a thing that happens, and it's something that you have to be aware of. Basically, to summarize, there are three ways that you can gain an audience with art. Two of them are great, quality and content. One of them, bribery, not so much. So stick to the first two and then kind of toss the third one away because you don't need it in your life. That's all I've got for today. If you're interested in this subject, I, once again, definitely recommend that book, Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. And you can head over to Animator Island TV on YouTube and check out all of our videos because we strive to make high quality and good content. So, hey, check it out if you feel like it. That's all I've got, and I hope you have a great day. I'm going to go continue my peaceful walk in the woods, and we'll see you next time. Bye.